If you're a fan of horror films, you've probably seen the iconic Conjuring franchise, particularly The Conjuring 2. In it, a demonic nun terrorizes a family, while a couple of paranormal investigators try to rid the home of evil. It's regarded by many as one of the greatest horror sequels of all time. But what if I told you that the terrifying events portrayed in that film were based on real-life occurrences? A case so well documented and so controversial that even today, nearly 50 years later, it's still being debated. This is the true story of the Enfield Poltergeist. The setting is Enfield, a working-class suburb in North London. The year is 1977. In a modest house at 284 Green Street lived Peggy Hodgson, a single mother of 4 children: Margaret, 13, Janet, 11, Johnny, 10, and Billy, 7. Life for the Hodgsons had already been tough. Peggy was raising her kids alone, struggling to make ends meet. But things were about to take a turn, into the unimaginable. It all began in August 1977, when Janet and Margaret reported strange noises, knocking from within the walls, rustling sounds, and furniture shifting without cause. At first, Peggy dismissed it as childish imagination or a prank, but that skepticism vanished when she herself witnessed a chest of drawers slide across the floor unaided. She tried to push it back, only for it to resist as if some unseen force was holding it in place. That was the moment Peggy knew something was terribly wrong. Panicked, she ran to her neighbors, Vic and Peggy Nottingham, who rushed over to investigate. Vic later stated that he heard loud, rhythmic knocking from within the walls and ceiling, sounds for which no source could be found. The family was terrified, and understandably so. On September 1, 1977, Peggy called the police. One officer who responded was WPC Carolyn Heaps of the Metropolitan Police. While inspecting the house, she claimed to have seen a wooden chair move about 4 feet across the floor by itself. She examined it for wires or trickery. Nothing. In her official written statement, she confirmed witnessing unexplained movement and was unable to determine a natural cause. It was one of the rare times British police formally acknowledged witnessing a possible paranormal event. Shortly after, the Daily Mirror got wind of the story. Reporter Douglas Bence and photographer Graham Morris were sent to cover it. Initially skeptical, Morris quickly became a believer after being struck in the face by a flying Lego brick, thrown from nowhere, with enough force to leave a visible lump. Other items began flying through the room, including marbles and small toys. Morris noted something particularly chilling. When the marbles hit the ground, they didn't roll. They simply dropped, as if falling from a great height. Stranger still, the toys were warm to the touch, as if energized. Morris set up a camera in the girl's bedroom to take photos at 15-second intervals. One photograph famously captured Janet suspended in mid-air. While some believe this shows her levitating, skeptics argue it merely depicts her jumping from the bed, caught mid-leap. The debate over that single image continues to this day. With media frenzy growing, the Daily Mirror contacted the Society for Psychical Research, SPR, an organization devoted to investigating paranormal claims. They dispatched Maurice Grosse, an inventor and researcher who had recently joined the society following the tragic death of his own daughter. He arrived at the Hodgson residence eager to help, and soon after, he was joined by Guy Lyon Playfair, a seasoned journalist and SPR member. Over the next 18 months, the two men conducted a painstaking investigation. They visited the house over 180 times, including 25 all-night vigils, documenting more than 2,000 separate incidents. Their findings included furniture moving unaided, electrical disturbances, objects being hurled across rooms, and children being levitated or thrown from their beds. In one instance, they wired Janet's bed with sensors to detect movement, but the wires snapped mysteriously while the bed still shifted on its own. Janet was frequently the focal point of these events. During some episodes, her demeanor would shift dramatically. She would enter what seemed like a trance and begin speaking in a deep, gravelly male voice.
2 days before I died, I had a wind blowing. Then I had an hemorrhage and I fell asleep and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs.
The voice identified itself as Bill Wilkins, a 72-year-old man who claimed to have died in the house from a brain hemorrhage while sitting in the living room chair. When investigators researched the name, they found that a man named Bill Wilkins had in fact died in the house under such circumstances, details the children could not have known. The voices were recorded extensively. In one chilling session, Gross asked the entity to explain where it went when it wasn't in the room. The voice responded, "Through your walls, all of you." It also answered in knocks, 53 times when asked how long ago it had lived there. Eventually, even Margaret began producing the same voice, suggesting either a shared experience or collusion. As the case gained national and international attention, American demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the Hodgson home. Contrary to what The Conjuring 2 portrays, their stay was brief, lasting only a few days. They recorded a handful of sessions and claimed to witness demonic manifestations, but many investigators dismissed their involvement as opportunistic. Even Playfair, who firmly believed in the haunting, later expressed skepticism about the Warrens' intentions, stating that they were not invited and turned up unannounced. By early 1978, the activity began to taper off, though strange occurrences continued sporadically into 1979. However, with fewer witnesses and diminishing evidence, media attention began to wane. As the case cooled down, skeptics entered the scene. Anita Gregory and John Beloff, also from the SPR, reported catching Janet faking phenomena, bending spoons and bouncing on her bed to make things move. They concluded that while many incidents could be staged, there were still several that defied logic. Illusionists and skeptics like Joe Nickel and Milbourne Christopher argued that the photos of levitation showed jumping, and that the voices could be produced through a technique called false vocal cord vibration, a trick used by ventriloquists. Maurice Grosse, however, stood by his work. He even offered £1,000 to anyone who could replicate the voice using false vocal cords. No one succeeded convincingly. He also insisted that while the children did sometimes exaggerate or fake events, likely due to the intense attention, they could not have faked all of it, especially not the objects seen moving in front of multiple adult witnesses. In 1980, Guy Lyon Playfair published This House is Haunted, The True Story of a Poltergeist, a detailed account of the case. In the book, he reaffirmed his belief that much of the activity was genuine and not merely pranks by attention-seeking children. Over the decades, the Enfield Poltergeist has become a legend in paranormal circles. It has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, TV dramas, radio specials, and of course The Conjuring 2, 2016, which dramatized and fictionalized many aspects. Despite its embellishments, the film reignited global interest in the haunting. Even today, 284 Green Street remains a subject of intrigue. Tourists frequently visit the home, snapping photos and asking current residents about ghosts. The new owners have expressed frustration at the constant attention, but the legend refuses to fade. In later interviews, Janet Hodgson, now an adult, admitted that some incidents were fabricated, but insisted that 98% of what happened was real. Margaret has supported her claims. Both women have said the events left lasting psychological scars. Maurice Grosse passed away in 2006, still a staunch believer in the paranormal. Playfair died in 2018, remaining convinced of the haunting's authenticity. As for the skeptics, their voices still echo in the debate, ensuring the case remains one of the most polarizing in paranormal history. The Enfield Poltergeist case continues to captivate both believers and skeptics. On one side, there are over 30 independent witnesses, 2,000 recorded events, hours of audio evidence, and countless testimonials. On the other, there are confirmed instances of faking, plausible explanations involving psychology, adolescent trickery, and investigative bias. Regardless of where you stand, the Enfield Poltergeist remains perhaps the most thoroughly documented and hotly contested paranormal case of the 20th century. Whether it was a hoax that spiraled out of control or a real encounter with the unknown, one thing is clear: the mystery has never truly been solved.